when you go to a restaurant, I think a lot of parents just say, oh, you be good now. They're going to be exactly the same as they are at home. Why do you expect them to have different personalities? So it's different food, it's a different environment, a different time. So meet their needs. Their needs are they need to have fun, they need to eat, but they might not want to eat that stuff. So, and then also have something for them to do. Hello, welcome to the BratBusters Parenting Podcast. My name's Lisa Bunnage. I'm a parenting coach, a mom, and a grandmother. I forgot to say that in the last one. I'm a mom and I'm not just a parenting coach. More importantly, I'm a mom and a grandmother. And then I'm a parenting coach. Anyway, welcome to our podcast. I never know what we're going to be talking about. I like to be thrown for a loop and surprised with everything. And I am joined by my daughter, Amy Bunnage, who does all my social media, all my marketing, and all the planning. She's the one who tells me what to do, when to do it, and how to do it.
But more importantly, I'm a daughter.
She's my daughter. Yes.
Okay. So this episode, we're going to be talking about mealtime battles.
Oh, okay.
I know this comes up a lot for you.
It does. Yeah.
Is there anything you want to talk about as far as setting up a mealtime routine before we get into this?
It doesn't matter what time you eat. Like a lot of parents say, should we eat the exact same time every single night? No. I think bedtime should be consistent. But no, it doesn't matter what time you eat. It's just the routine should be the same. Maybe not for breakfast and lunch. They're more casual, on the run often too. But at dinner time, every dinner should be sort of the same. But we'll get into all that as we go along, I'm sure. But yeah, I think it should be a regular routine. Not when they're older and that, but when they're really little, especially, yes, get them into a good routine.
And I think something we're just going to touch on right now is you're not going to be talking about the nutrition side of things, all of that, because that's not the scope.
Well, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. And no, that's not my area. I'm just going to talk about manners and how to get them to be polite and that sort of thing. And what I will do, though, is I will talk about what I did with my kids. Not to say that's the best thing to do, but I will talk about how I got my kids to eat healthy. And we'll get into that. Or do you want me to just do that now?
How about we chat about that now?
I think we'll get that out of the way. Anyway, this is what I did with my own kids. By the way, I hate cooking, but I made everything from scratch because I'm really into healthy food. So we didn't have any junk food in the house. Do you ever remember, like, growing up when you were young? As they were teenagers, yes, we did have junk. But when you were growing up, was there any ice cream or potato chips in there or anything?
It was like the odd Tim Tam.
The odd Tim Tam. Yeah. Well, they grew up in Australia. So the odd time we'd have Tim Tams, but that wasn't a regular thing. It was just like a treat. But anyway, so here's what I did. I made everything from scratch from the time they were little, and I would hide really healthy stuff into everything. So if they were having cheese sauce, there was a whole bunch of vegetables thrown, like ground up, pureed cauliflower, whatever. There was always healthy stuff thrown into it. So, and then I don't like pushing food on kids if they really don't like the taste of something. So I knew what they liked. So I kind of cooked around that. But I did tell them, look, you have to have fruit and vegetables every single day. And every single night we'd have to have 3 vegetables. But I said, I knew what they liked, and I would just make the same 3 vegetables virtually every night. And then they had to try something new every week or whatever, but they didn't have to eat it. But yeah, I just had healthy stuff in the house. So they either ate healthy or they didn't eat at all. That was sort of my attitude. But I didn't want any fights over taste. So I did tend to cook around their taste buds. For sure, I did. And I covered everything with cheese sauce, basically. Then they'll eat just about anything with cheese sauce on it. But like I said, it was full of healthy stuff. They didn't know that, though.
Well, I think we had an inkling.
Because when they go out, everything tasted quite different. Like I did a lot of baking, made all the bread. And I remember the first time my son had pizza out in the world. And he says, Mommy, he was about 3. Mommy, this sauce was really weird. It was red, whereas my sauce was brown because I'd pureed spinach into it. So stuff like that, they started to clue in. But yeah, that's just what I did. I'm not saying you should do that. If you want to eat with, and have ice cream in the freezer, go ahead. But that's how I did it. And they ate healthy because there was nothing else to eat.
I remember that. I enjoyed it growing up.
You didn't know any different. They'd go out somewhere else and they go, oh, this is, and you know what's funny? I've forgotten this. Every time they go to someone else's house, do you remember what you kids would say? Every single time they'd come home, if they'd had dinner somewhere else, they'd say, oh my, she's such a good cook. They said that about everybody. I think that's because they were making all this really good stuff and I was making healthy crap. But yeah, and I was always confused by that because I knew those people. They weren't like the best cooks, but I guess compared to what I was making, but they always said that. Just the best cook. Anyway, you remember that now?
A little, yeah.
Oh, it was funny. Anyway, okay, so first question.
Okay, Victoria from the United States. How can I work towards having my 2 and 3-year-olds stay seated for meals?
2-year-old's kind of difficult, but they should be in a high chair. 3-year-old, you put on the behavior board, follow mealtime routine, and you write it all out. And I would actually put it on the table in front of them too. Use pictures because they can't read. And it goes something like this. You come to the table within 5 minutes of being asked to do so. So you give them a little bit of warning. And you put a timer on, by the way. And then when you sit down, you can't get up again without permission. So they can't get up. Also, there's no toys or no screens at the table. And you don't say anything when when they're doing things wrong. If they get up, you don't say anything during the meal. But after the meal, you say, okay, let's go to the board. And you look at the board and you say, okay, remember the mealtime routine? Well, you got up. Oh, I forgot. That's okay. You forgot, but there's still going to be a consequence. So you just follow it up with consequences. There's no anger in any of this. And you never want to ruin a meal. So if they did get up and get a toy or something, just let them do it that time, but then they will eventually learn. But yeah, it's a hard one. The reason, like, bedtime battles is hard too, but it's usually only one bad night. Mealtime routine can stretch out for a week or two. Just I don't know why. Well, I kind of do, but anyway. But yeah, so give that a go. And I've got a client, I think just recently, they did it. And after the first night, I can't remember what the consequence was. It was something that they really didn't want to do. And they had to do this one consequence. And sure enough, they never got up again. So they learned. The 2-year-old won't learn this, though. They're just watching and they should be in a high chair. So
And I remember we ate all of our meals, snacks, everything was at the table growing
there
up.
was no food around the house. And I think that's a big part of it, too. If you allow your kids to have snacks around the house, why on earth wouldn't they want to walk around with a meal? My kids didn't get a cup of water. They had to sit down at the kitchen table or the dining room table to eat or drink anything. That was just the rule. I'm very fussy. I didn't want messes around my house. And then we'd have visiting kids come over and the parents would hand them a chocolate bar and let them walk around the house. I'd find chocolate stains all over my curtains and everything. It was disgusting. So yeah, my kid, there's no reason they don't need to walk around. Also, you watch kids who are walking around with food. They're not eating it half the time. They're just making a mess. They just get used to doing it. So I taught my kids, you sit and eat and that's it. They didn't know any different. You never, ever questioned that.
I actually remember getting excited for birthday parties because you let us eat as we were walking around outside.
Yeah,
It was
outside.
different.
Yeah. Yeah, with birthday parties, when I'm socializing, it's different. You don't want to put those rules on other kids, right? Because they're not used to sitting and being polite for a meal. So, they just walk around eating pizza, whatever. Anything goes when you're socializing. But at home, like when it was just us, there was manners, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I'll
Next.
tell you something cute. My son, we lived in Australia where my kids were born and raised, and we visited, he was 18 months old. He's the older one. We went over to Canada, Canada now, but we visited here, and he was 18 months old, and there was potato chips and cookies all on the coffee tables, and there was a big family gathering. And my son really wanted some of that stuff, and he was just staring at it. And the family kept saying, "Go and have some, and he wouldn't touch it. And I wasn't noticing this. I didn't notice it. And someone said, "Why is he not eating anything? He's looking right at it." And I said, "Oh, because he's not sitting at a table. He didn't know how to eat. He didn't know that he could just pick food up and walk around with it like the other kids were." So I sat him down at the table, and then they brought him a little kid chair and a little kid table. And he sat there and he very delicately ate a potato chip because he wasn't used to getting all that garbage either, right? So it was a big deal to him. But he sat there all politely eating a potato chip. They thought that was the cutest thing. That's why they set him up in the middle of the room so they could all ooh and ah over this polite little 18-month-old.
That's really wholesome.
Isn't that cute? I'd forgotten about that. That was cute.
Okay.
Well, obviously I had not forgotten about it because I just told the stories.
It just wasn't forefront of your mind. You don't
No.
think about it 24/7.
Well, I will now.
Okay, next question is Jayla from the Philippines. 18-month-old. I go to work full time, so his primary caregiver when I am away when he has his meal times is his nanny. While his nanny helps feed him, my son likes to throw things whenever he sees me during meal times. What could be the cause of this? We've tried consistent corrective action, either signaling that we do not throw things or replace the item in its rightful place for him to mimic. He still continues to do this in a playful manner whenever he sees me. Any suggestions on how to correct this?
Well, he's just doing it to get attention. Anyway, what I would do, tell the nanny to do this. And when he throws food, then she picks it up, throws it in the garbage, and then she hand feeds him. And he won't like that. He'll probably want to do it himself. So if he won't eat by being hand fed, then say, "Okay, all done," and get him down from eating. And then maybe 15 minutes later, he's still hungry probably. So then about 15 minutes later, then put him up and try again. Give him a little tiny bit of food, tell the nanny to do all this. Give him a little tiny bit of food And then when he throws it, throw it away and then hand feed him. Keep doing that. He'll eventually eat when he wants to. By the way, I don't like teaching nannies to do any of this or anybody else. I only like to teach parents how to do this. But because he's doing it with the nanny when you're around, I'm just sort of giving in with this. But I don't teach nannying. I just teach parenting. So because I don't want the nanny or anybody else to be the leader, I want you to be the leader. But he is really little. So there's nothing you can do later. It has to be done right in the moment. So that's why you're going to have to get the nanny to do that.
Okay. This is a similar question. So it's Chloe from the United Kingdom. Toddler's 2 years and 5 months, tantrum at meal times with throwing food. Then once the tantrum has subsided, he asks for the food that he threw to eat. I want him to eat, but I also don't want to reward the behavior. Help.
Well, he has to eat. So I would do the same thing. He throws the food, then he has a tantrum. Well, I'd throw it away. Then he has a tantrum. When the tantrum stops, hand feed him. Just go right into that hand feeding. He won't get it right away, by the way, but eventually he will. He'll understand that when he throws food and has a tantrum, he's going to be hand fed. They don't usually like being hand fed. Now, the next question often happens, and they say, what if they like being hand fed? And I say, then you get really slow and stupid. What I mean by that is you get real slow. You might want to drop the food. So he's dying to eat. You know, he's sitting there with his mouth open, ready to have a mouthful because he wants you to hand feed him. So just get really slow. And then you're just going to feed him and pull away and say, oh, I forgot to call my mom. Or, look like you're distracted. Don't look like you're doing it on purpose. Look like you're just slow and stupid. You can barely get that food on the spoon and it takes forever to get it into his mouth. The idea is that he'll just start hand feeding himself, right? Not using the utensil, whatever, but that's the idea behind that.
I wouldn't have to act slow and stupid. I just am not good at feeding kids, as we learned.
Oh, now my granddaughter was here the other day, and my daughter, it's not her child, it's my son's little girl. She's 9 months old, and my daughter doesn't have any experience with babies, and so she's eating solids now, my little granddaughter. So I was feeding her, and then I said to my daughter, I said, do you want to do it? And she's like, oh, okay. So she's trying to feed her, and the food was going everywhere. And then I'd say, no, you just use the spoon and scrape it off her face, right? But what my daughter was doing was she was trying to scrape it before she had anything in her mouth. I said, no, you feed her, then you scrape. So she's going with an empty spoon, teasing the granddaughter who's got her mouth wide open, trying to scrape. It was just a disaster. So we had to take over.
So if they like being hand fed, just get me to come over and
she'll be slow and stupid with it.
Okay, we have the final question. Lisa from Canada. What a coincidence.
There you go. That's me.
I have a 19-month-old and 2 boys ages 6 and 4, almost 5. My question is, how would you deal with a child begging for things? For example, the boys will ask for a snack too close to a mealtime, and I tell them no and explain how it'll be dinner time soon, but they continue to beg relentlessly. Should I just ignore them after I told them once, as difficult as that might be? Or should there be a consequence if they continue to beg?
The first time I would say, I said no snacks before dinner. Then they ask again. I say, I'll tell you what, you keep coming at me, there'll be a consequence after dinner. And then make sure there's a consequence. So that means just get them to do something like a chore. If they won't do that, then take something away. Or I would even say, if they keep coming at you, I don't like to use food, but a quick with something that works quite well is if you normally have dessert, I would just say, you kept bugging me and now there's no dessert. Just come in hard and fast with that one. Just say, yeah, that's it. They learn. They stop begging. It's pretty quick because they're a bit older. They're 6 and almost 5. So yeah, they can learn that very fast. Keep coming at me. There'll be a consequence. Your choice. And then you ignore. And then after dinner, you said, remember what happened earlier. So here's the consequence. No dessert.
Now I want to rewind. You said that mealtime is hard and it takes a little bit longer. How come?
Because it happens all the time and because they are snacking walking around the house. That's why, and you brought that up too, and that was a really good point. If they're used to snack, they don't understand exceptions. So why is it okay to walk around with a bag of potato chips and then they can't walk around with their meal at dinner time? You see, it's the inconsistency. Plus they have to eat 3 times a day. Plus they're not tired. At nighttime, they're tired. That's why bedtime is such a good one to do. It's really hard to do. It's one night of hell, but it works very fast because you're meeting their needs. Food is also a need, but they can fill up on a little bit of food and then walk around and then be difficult for the rest of the meal because it just is difficult. It's just a really tricky one. It takes time. Except when I said that no dessert one. I did have a client recently and we said that the kid was bugging them about something and it was around food and it was the exact same thing I just recommended. And I said, if you have dessert every night, they don't need that. Okay, it's not a need. So I said, just take dessert away if they keep bugging you. And they only had to do that once. So that aspect of mealtime was easy, but generally getting a kid used to sitting when they're used to walking around they're physically used to getting up. So it's physically retraining their body not to stand up and eat. And that's why it's so difficult. It's such a habit that they've gotten into. Habits are hard to change.
Yeah.
Now, do you remember when you were little? I remember my kids, we used to go to some really nice restaurants and they were really little. And whenever they'd see us coming into the restaurant, everyone would kind of look and go, oh no, why would you bring kids into this nice place? And then as people were leaving after a couple hours or whatever, everyone would come up to our table and say, wow, your kids are so polite. Do you know why? I mean, they were easy kids anyway, because I was a leader, so I already had that done. But what I did was, you can't just expect kids to sit there for 2 hours in a nice fancy restaurant when they don't want any of the food anyway, right? So what I did was I set it up for success. We would take them to a park on the way, so they'd get some exercise on the way there. And then when I'd already fed them, by the way, at home. They'd already been fed, because I thought, what if they don't like any of the food at this restaurant? Sometimes they would eat some, sometimes they wouldn't. So I fed them before we went out. Then we took them to a park just for a few minutes on the way. And then when we got there, lo and behold, Mom had a goodie bag. And I'd pull out a new coloring book that they'd never seen. So I was meeting their needs. Kids, when you go to a restaurant, I think a lot of parents just say, you be good now. They're going to be exactly the same as they are at home. Why do you expect them to have different personalities? So it's different food, it's a different environment, a different time. So meet their needs. Their needs are they need to have fun, they need to eat, but they might not want to eat that stuff. So, and then also have something for them to do. I always brought stuff for my kids to do. The goodie bag.
Oh, the goodie bag.
They love the goodie bag, but they only got it when we went grocery shopping when they were little, or restaurants, or somewhere where I just needed them to sit there quietly. And they knew once that goodie bag came out, they would just sit there and, color or whatever.
Yeah, you kept it a novelty.
It was a novelty. Yeah, it wasn't something they got every day.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. It was a novelty. Something new, something different.
Yeah. Does mealtime routine, how would you set up a mealtime routine?
Well, I would, for one thing, I wouldn't let them eat a lot of snacks. I wasn't big on snacks with you kids. Or if there was usually just fruit or something like that, something light. But I would give them some warning. I would say, we're going to be eating in 5 minutes. So don't start anything that you can't finish within 5 minutes. So I was fair, right? Like, imagine if you're just start a video game or something and you're working on your levels and the kid didn't know dinner was coming up in 5 minutes and he's just started. I thought that was kind of mean if people do that. So I always said, look, we're going to be eating at such and such time. Make sure you don't start anything. So I kind of was, kind of consider it that way. And then I'd say, okay, so, go wash up and come to the table. And then they'd just sit down. And now that was our time to chat. We had fun, didn't we? Mm-hmm. Like, we had a blast at dinner time. We just sit there and laugh. And I made stuff that they liked to eat. And they were hungry because I didn't give them a lot of snacks. When my kids were 9 and 14, the three of us came to visit Canada, and we were staying with my mom. And the neighbors, my mom was in her 80s at this point, and my mom was out in the backyard gardening one night. And and my kids and I were still around the dinner table. She'd already finished, and we're still just sitting there yabbering. And they were like 9 and 14. And the neighbor said, what's going on at your house, Lil? And she goes, what do you mean? She goes, every night this week, it sounds like a party. It was just me and my kids at the dinner table laughing. We had a blast.
We're a loud family too.
Very loud family. And they thought she had like a house full. They all thought she was raging in her 80s. That's why she had to go out and garden. She couldn't handle it anymore. It was so loud.
Yeah, we were too much for her.
She even used to say, my God, you're loud. Especially my son, you were pretty loud too. But I remember your brother and I trying to keep up to the two of us. Yeah, we're very, very loud. So make dinner time fun too. They want to sit at the table. They want to eat. They want to be with you. And as they get older, that's the only time you're ever going to be with them usually, because they're out doing stuff on their own when they're teenagers. So we would basically sit every night and have dinner, and we'd sit and chat and catch up. It was fun.
It was nice.
So make meals fun too. Another good way to do that is to do the never-ending story, I think it's called, the continuation story, where you go around the table and you take turns. You start the story. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful mother, the most beautiful woman in the whole world, and her name was, and then you pass it off to the next person, and it's a continuous story, and then the kids get in on that and they love it. So make meal times fun and enjoyable, if possible. Not always possible if they're getting up and that, but you get the idea.
Yeah. Should we end on maybe just like a little funny story? Should we talk about the pancake batter?
That was actually a really good one. I wasn't feeling very well. I had a lot of back problems. And so I was laying out on the couch. I couldn't sit up for dinner with the family. So I was my ex-husband now, but at the time we were married, and he was going to get the meal ready. So I was sort of all organized already. So He said, "Where's the cheese sauce?" Because I'd pre-made it. And I said, "Oh, it's in the fridge." So all I heard, and our kids were not complainers at all. Like they just weren't, because I wouldn't put up with that. But they were, I could hear them all going, "Dad, what is this?" He said, "What do you mean?" They said, "It's just this cheese sauce tastes weird." So he says to me, "Lisa, what's going on? What's with the cheese sauce?" And so I got up with my bag back and I looked. I had two containers in the fridge. They looked identical. One was cheese sauce and one was pancake batter. So he'd covered their whole meal with pancake batter. So they all got tossed out. I don't remember what happened. They probably went out for pizza or something.
We got pizza with the red sauce.
Ooh, the red sauce, not the brown crap that I made. But yes, that was a good one. I don't think that pancake batter. I can eat almost anything, but that wouldn't have tasted good.
Oh, it was pretty. From what I remember, it was not the best.
Yeah, and I've had some real flops as meals, but that was the worst one, I think.
Okay, I think we might end there.
Okay, thanks so much for joining us. Amy Bunnage and Lisa Bunnage here, and we'll catch up next time. Happy parenting. Bye now.